Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the launch event for Balance. Balance is the brand new LGBTQ plus allies network group from Chartered Accountants Ireland. My name is John McNamara. I'm the chair of the organizing group for Balance, and we are really delighted to appear for the first time today. And I think we have a really interesting hour ahead with an excellent panel of contributors. Initially, maybe a few words on behalf of the Balance Committee. Simply put, Balance exists to provide awareness of LGBTQ+ inclusion. We want to encourage visibility, ensure institute members, our staff and students can be their real selves during both their studies and their workplaces. And we want to build and strengthen relationship with our allies who will ensure our perspective is visibly advocated for. So Balance speaks both to our working agenda and our future plans to inform and provoke discussion on different issues. And today our focus is on effective allyship. And I think we all have a heightened sense of what is most important to us as we gradually emerge post-pandemic to what is a really uncertain world in lots of ways. We speak about bringing your true self to work a lot, but the reality is many of us have been away from the office for nearly 2 years. Many of us have never met some of our work colleagues, and mental health impacts are clearer for many of us than in times past. And whilst equality has been delivered in some areas, which has been hard fought for and hard won in recent years, we know things remain really precarious in other areas, both at home and abroad. And so LGBTQ equality is not yet done. And in that context, allyship and visible and effective allyship is even more important. And we wanted to bring a range of personal perspectives today in our panel. And you can, I suppose, take it from me, our speakers can talk for Ireland. And so having an effective moderator to corral all of that is even more important. And in Audrey Carville, we have exactly that. Audrey has been a mainstay and a voice of reason and challenge in Morning Ireland for many years, and previous to that with the BBC. And of course, is a proud Monaghan woman to boot. So Audrey, we're delighted to have you today as moderator. And we also want you to become involved with Balance. Engagement prompts will appear throughout the hour. We have lots of ideas in the group. We need to put a structure around those. And we'll be encouraging all of you to reach out to us. There'll be email prompts visible on the screen and at the end, and we'll repeat that invitation a few times. We'll also be inviting questions or comments as we go, and Audrey will manage all of that. But before all of that, I'm really delighted to now hand over to Barry Dempsey, CEO of Chartered Accountants Ireland, and Barry will set the scene today and in the context of the wider D&I agenda from the Institute. So over to you, Barry.
Thank you, John. Thank you for leading this initiative, and thank you for the marvelous introduction to Balance and to our understanding of it. Good afternoon. I'm delighted to add my welcome to this very significant event for us. It's an important event for those of us participating this afternoon, but it's a very important event for the Institute and for the members. I'm delighted to welcome the wonderful panel this afternoon, Tiernan, Aisling, Sinead, and Michael, and members of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee who are joining us, also members of the Balance Group as introduced by John, and indeed everybody who's joining us here this afternoon. I'm adding my welcome to Audrey Carville. As you know, Audrey is a national expert on getting to the heart of the matter. So she's the right lady in the right place this afternoon. We recognize that some of us are here to support and to show solidarity with colleagues and peers, and some of us are here to experience the solidarity this afternoon. There's a place for everyone within Balance, and all of your support is gratefully appreciated. In the Institute, we're struck by how relevant and timely this startup is. When the Institute devised Strategy 24, the core values were reworked and set out clearly. And these core values were to underpin our vision of creating a sense of belonging for Institute members, for students, for staff, and for people who come in contact with us. One of our core values is inclusion, where we commit to acknowledge and embrace difference so that we can work better for all of us. The start of the Balance Group really builds tangibly on this. Not only is the value of inclusion represented in the initiative, but so too are other Strategy 24 values, including trust, collaboration, and overall for tomorrow for good. At today's event, we have a wonderful panel of speakers, and we look forward to and are keen to hear about their particular personal and professional experience of allyship. At Chartered Accountants Ireland, we recognise and appreciate the commitment and the work of all of our committees and volunteers, as well as the staff who support this work. And so thank you to all of you for what you've done to help this Balance Group into existence and for organising today's event. Before I hand over, as with John, I'd like to encourage everybody here today to do what you can across your networks to spread the word about Balance and to support what is a brilliant startup. We hope you have an enjoyable and rewarding afternoon. Over to you, Audrey. Thank you.
Barry, thank you very much indeed. Well, I am delighted to be with you all today, to be part of this really important event, which has real life consequences for so many people. Congratulations to everyone involved in the establishment and the launch of Balance. What it aims to do cannot be underestimated and perhaps takes on an even greater significance, coming as it does as we emerge cautiously from the last 2 years. Because it is challenging for many of us, for very many different reasons, to be part of an office group once again. For some, it will be their first time meeting colleagues. For others, the impact of the restrictions and the pandemic has been severe, both socially and psychologically. So this new network group could not come at a better time. We have 4 wonderful people for you to meet and chat with over the next 35 minutes or so. 4 people who are doing incredible work for family, friends, and colleagues to ensure a greater understanding, a sense of belonging, inclusivity, and respect for diversity. So let's meet them. Tiernan Brady is with us today, and Tiernan is the Global Head of Inclusion with Clifford Chance Law Firm. He has worked to promote and achieve equality for much of his life. He was the political director of the marriage equality referendum here in Ireland in 2015. He went on to become the executive director of the equality campaign in Australia, which was also successful. Also with us today is Aisling Gannon. Aisling is a partner and head of healthcare at Evershed Sutherland Law Firm. She is with us today to share her own personal experience. Aisling has 2 teenagers. Her youngest, 13-year-old Steve, is transgender, and Aisling has been recognized as a true leader and ally to all LGBT+ colleagues. Michael Walls is here too, and Michael is head of finance with And Open. He trained with KPMG in Belfast, and he has worked in the industry for several years. He was the second co-host of the FinBiz webinar in 2020 on equality, diversity, and opportunity, and has represented the accountancy profession at One Young World Conference. And last but definitely not least, we are joined by Sinead Donovan, partner and chair of Grant Thornton. Sinead manages some of the company's biggest and most complex international projects, and she too is an ally and a leader among her colleagues and strongly believes in the importance of inclusion and diversity to ensure a motivated, effective, and equitable workplace. So we have lots to talk about between now and just before 2 o'clock. And as has been said already, we would really welcome any questions that you have for our guests this afternoon. You know how to do it at this stage. Use the Q&A button, and I will put them to our panel as we go along. So Tiernan, let's start. This network group Balance, why is it necessary in 2022?
Thanks, and hi, Audrey. I think it's brilliant. I think it's so good to see this starting. And in a way, I think one of the great challenges we face is that that people almost think this is old hat. Oh, sure, it's all done, we're all fine, and that there's nothing more to be done. And we think about big moments like marriage or big moments, civil partnership, decriminalization, and all that brilliant success. And Ireland is a gigantic success story for LGBT people. We have proved that you can change so much in a very short space of time. and radically transform things. But I think there's a couple of issues that emerge from that. One is people do tend to think, oh, well, Ireland is all done. Should we pass this? And there was a great Held vote, and we all seen everybody in Dublin Castle jumping up and down. Or, we've seen that piece of legislation and it's done. But that's not true, of course. And I think for two big reasons. One is, first of all, there's nothing inevitable about us keeping this progress. And we can see that all over the world currently. The idea that this will always just happen, that equality will just build on its own success. And when all the evidence tells us the opposite, there's nothing less inevitable than making this happen. It just doesn't accidentally happen. It happens when people don't take their foot off the pedal and realize that you're constantly building culture and equality. And in a way, we're victims of our own success, because I think great social change is so hard to get over the line. And then when you get over the line, nobody can imagine what the world was like without it. And that's actually a curse, because people go, oh, yes, this was going to happen. And sure, of course, it's so normal now, when in fact it was a huge struggle. And all of these rights, when we think about them, they're baby rights. Like, they're only a couple of years old. It's not like we've had 2,000 years or 1,500 years of having these rights. We've had the opposite. We've had a couple of thousand years of it being LGBT people being marginalized and targeted for that. And it's only a generation and a half where we've started to move that dial. So these are babies, and we have to nurse them. We have to protect them. We have to champion them. And if we stop doing that, they'll slip through our fingers. So I think building networks up like Balance now, the temptation to say, well, it's a funny time to launch this, isn't everything fixed? No, this is the time now. We've had so much success at changing the rules, but changing the rules doesn't automatically mean we've changed the culture or changed the lived experience for everybody. When people jump up and down in Dublin Castle and cheer, I remember thinking at the time going, there's 38% of people voted no. That's a lot of LGBT people walked into their workplace the following day to sit down with team colleagues who had voted no. So campaigns don't end when we reach milestones. They're just milestones. There's so much more to do, so much more culture to change, and so much more people, to make sure are protected and cherished. So I can't think of anything more timely. And I mean, and we can see in the world of business that that's just true. There are people who aren't out. There are people who don't feel confident being out. There are people who go back into the closet when they join work. And we can see it internationally, where this false idea that everything goes forward is just being challenged all the time, from Hungary to Poland to Texas. And vigilance is absolutely the watchword. And the idea that we can celebrate is brilliant, but we have to keep championing this stuff, or we'll wake up one day and wonder where it went.
And you all have your own lived experiences, and we're going to hear about some of those now over the next few minutes. Aisling, I'll bring you in at this point. Will you talk to us about your own family experience and some of the challenges that you faced during that time?
I will. Perhaps by way of introduction, I'll say, firstly, I'm honoured to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. Perhaps to give some context, in 2017, Evershed Sutherland launched their Perspective Group, which is our employee resource group to support members and allies of the LGBTQ+ community. And Greg Louganis, the US Olympic swimmer, was giving a talk to us all. And I sat thinking, really, should I be here? I'm an ally. Am I supposed to be here? And I realized that he was talking to me, because he was talking about bringing your whole self to work. And that summer, my son, who's now my son, I thought I had two girls. He was socially transitioning. He had told me that he was transgender, he told me he was a boy in a girl's body. That's what he told me, very categorically. He'd been trying to tell me this since he was about 3. I thought he was a tomboy. He eventually told me, I'm not a tomboy because that's a type of girl. I'm a boy. So at 7 years of age, he came to me with the solution, which was that he just needed to cut his hair and change his name. And when I was sitting listening to Greg Louganis, I realized that the support networks available are just as important for allies as they are for members of the community. And I don't mean that from a selfish perspective. What I mean is that I was lost. I was a parent being told how to lead my parenting life by my child. My child was proposing a life for himself that caused me some anxiety, frankly. I wasn't sure how to make my way forward. And I'll be honest, until I sat there listening to Greg Louganis, I had no idea, either conceptually or in reality, how I was going to deal with this in a working life, from my working life's perspective. But I left that meeting saying that perspective is as much there to support me as it is to support my son in his future working life. And I started to talk to my colleagues about my lived personal experience. And I can honestly tell you that it changed my life. Up until that moment, I felt that I had to close the door on my personal life when I went into the office, switch on I'm a partner, I'm head of a team, I'm managing clients, be the professional. And I sat and I decided I was going to speak to my team, spoke to my team. Everyone ended up in tears. It was all a really humbling, really incredibly warm experience. And I'll be honest, it was the start of my journey, both professionally and personally, in terms of being able to ask for help. But it made me realize that I was in my 40s, I was a parent, I was already a partner. How difficult must this be like for a 17-year-old, 19-year-old going into a new sports club, going into a new environment, going into a new partner's house, and then somebody coming into the workforce and thinking, do I actually have to come out every day to somebody and wonder about the response of the reaction? And it really brought home to me how we need to be visible allies. We need to be a visible community of D&I supports so that people don't feel they have to come out. And we have lanyards that are rainbow flag lanyards in work, and we wear them with pride. And the idea is not because we're doing anything other than saying we're here to support you, but feel free to have a conversation with me. I'm not going to presume your partner is male or female. I'm not going to presume you're male or female. I use the pronouns she, her. I don't presume that because somebody has whatever color of hair or clothes on that they have the pronouns that I think should match how they present visibly. So I think it's just really important to me to have had that experience of feeling like I could bring as an ally and as a parent my whole self to work. And certainly Steve's experience for me was such that I had to open my eyes and realize that there was a world out there that I didn't know existed. I thought I was awake. I thought I was woke. I thought I was lit. I thought I was okay. I had lots of friends, cousins who are, people I'm really close to who are members of the LGBT community. I did not know what T stood for. I got to 40 years of age and not know what T stood for. And then all of a sudden I have this slam in my face when I realize it's in my family. It's directly with me. And I had to learn very fast. So as a sort of a nerdy professional, I decided to do the equivalent of sort of a PhD in 15 minutes. And I managed to get some supports around me. I found support networks. I met other parents. I met other people. And Steve opened my eyes, and I could talk all day, and I won't, about his experiences. But it's been an absolute eye-opener to feel the benefit of that support network in my workplace. And I'm only an ally. I'm only a parent. So I sincerely hope that some of the benefit of that can be there for others. The last thing I'll say in terms of being an ally support in the workplace was when we came together as a community, as a committee, across our prospective network. My colleagues turned to me and said, you have to speak up. There are occasions when you either have to speak up, show up, or stand up. But and I said, I can't, it's not my experience, it's my son's experience. And he said, but you're the partner. You are the only person who has an experience to speak for us at that senior table. So as a senior partner at the executive table, we said, okay, well, what can we do? How can we manage this? So we had unconscious bias training, we had executive management and leadership training, and then we had training throughout the office. And I have to say, there are just hidden heroes in every corner of every building. And there are people who I've just made such wonderful friends from colleagues who just at different moments were able to say, I get it. And, Steve sounds like an absolute cracker. And I've said, well, he can be a brat as well. He's just a regular kid. And now he's a 13-year-old who is living his best life. He has challenges, no doubt. I'm not going to undermine them, but he knows he's supported. He knows he's loved. And thanks to organizations like this, I hope that he will go on to have a future life that doesn't have the limitations that I, as an adult, was thought were in front of him when he first came out at age 7.
Aisling, thank you so much for that and for your honesty as well. And you raised so many important points there that I want to explore throughout our conversation between now and 2 o'clock. Michael, can I bring you in and get some of your own personal experiences in workplaces or other environments?
Yep, thanks very much for having me along, and John and Karen for inviting me to speak. It's great hearing the stories from Tiernan and Aisling, and like it's definitely about educating yourself, even as a member of the LGBTQ community. Like I'm constantly educating myself. I suppose I come from a small town in Northern Ireland called Hilltown in County Down. And when I was growing up, we wouldn't have known very many gay people. So it was always a taboo topic. You just don't talk about it. So I went off to the big smoke and went to university and started my career in KPMG in Belfast. I just didn't feel comfortable being openly gay. Like some friends knew, family knew, but there was always that fear in the back of my mind, Audrey, that, you know, if I came out, this would limit my career. And I distinctly remember, you know, years ago, someone saying that there was a gay member of the community at home and they were fired from a local newspaper because they found out that they were gay. And that was always in the back of my head, this fear, if someone finds out, that's going to limit my career. And it couldn't have been more wrong as I kind of progressed throughout my career, thankfully. But it wasn't until, you know, the marriage referendum happened in 2015 and I was working in Google at the time that I really did feel comfortable being my entire self. Like throughout my career working in KPMG and EY and another organization called Open Hydro, I held that bit back. So anytime you'd be having conversations with people and that they'd be openly talking about their partner, I didn't feel like I could jump in and have a conversation about my boyfriend at home at the time. I always held back that part, and it is a drain mentally on yourself, because you're constantly hiding that part, and it kind of lowers your engagement with the organization. And I found, like, when I was working at Google and I could open up and be myself, I was 100 times more productive. I was more engaged with what I was doing. And I actually refer to it as my inner unicorn. I just let my inner unicorn shine out. And I definitely was able to progress a lot better within my career. Then I went on to join Urbanvolt and with, you know, the first B Corp in Ireland, became finance director there. And like, you know, I was an openly gay member of the leadership team there. And that kind of gave me the confidence to be myself, to progress my career, and actually to show everybody else it's important for people to see someone in a leadership position progressing. I never knew any gay accountants in my career until lately, like certainly at the beginning, it just wasn't talked about. So I'm delighted now that this network exists to create some visibility for trainees and others out there to kind of engage on this subject. So, yep.
Michael, thank you so much. Sinead, Michael just used the word there, visibility. That's what I was thinking, just listening to himself and to Aisling. And that is so important, isn't it? Visibility. How do you see balance working? What is its role?
Yeah, look, great question. And first off, can I just say how honored I am to be on a panel like this. I feel a little bit of an imposter because you guys have all got so much kind of personal stories and have lived through this. And what I'm trying to bring to this balance, to this panel, is as a leader, as a chartered accountant who has not personally experienced this, but I want to ensure that we are able to be ourselves in our profession and in our work. And I think, Audrey, that's what balance brings to it. It's, as a profession, we need to let our members and let our students be exactly who they want to be and who they need to be. We also need to educate our employer members as to how they embrace permitting their employees to be who they want to be and need to be. And it's also to what I feel is that as a profession, to our other stakeholders, to our clients, to our fellow legal professions, everyone, just to be that voice, to say this is what we need to do, not need to do, this is the right thing to do. Everybody needs to be able to feel themselves, There's a lot of education. That word has been used an awful lot, and that's why maybe I'm on the panel. I'm probably that archetypical accountant who maybe doesn't know a huge amount about things. And like you, Aisling, I got to 40, and my kids are still telling me things that I don't know about, and thankfully they're learning it in school. And it's normal. I mean, I came off, as you can see, thankfully I'm lucky to be away here, but I came off the slopes this morning and said to my kids, I'm going to do this call. And they said, what is it? And my 13-year-old said to me, why do you need to do that, Mom? I mean, you know, God, everyone is included. And I said, just like you said, Tiernan, it's baby steps. It's baby steps. And accountants are not necessarily the most, let's be honest, the most proactive in the world. So we need to give this a little bit of a push. And Audrey, that's what I feel balance is. Let's give this a little bit of a push. Let's go behind them and make sure everyone belongs. It's a lovely word, and it's a word that we need to really embrace.
Tiernan, in your experience, are managers and bosses, are they keen to learn?
I think they're terribly keen to learn. I think probably one of the greatest challenges is that the corporate world isn't a great place for people, you know, who are worried about making a mistake. So what we have is senior management right across so many sectors who are in their heads brilliant on this. Do you believe in inclusion? Yes. Do I believe in equality for LGBT? Yes. But a value you keep in your head is a secret. So it's not being actively demonstrated by anybody, and therefore it's not driving culture or building confidence for the people on your team. And I think one of the really interesting questions becomes, well, what's stopping people from doing that, especially at leadership level? And of course, the fear of getting it wrong is a massive challenge, especially for leaders in the corporate world. So we're structured to think that way. You go into meetings trying to get it right. You never want to be the person that gets it wrong. And I think as we look around the entire inclusion spectrum, people look at that and go, well, maybe the best way not to make a mistake is not to do anything at all. And we're holding leaders back. So I think allowing leaders to be confident, allowing leaders to see how important it is that they are visible and demonstrating the values that they have, that we're not trying to persuade you to have these values. You know, by and large, we know most management are there, but that what they're not demonstrating won't drive culture. And I think one of the things we think about a lot, even at work here, is for managers and leaders, is getting them to see that the people who come to work with them come to work from the real world. And the real world hasn't always treated them fairly. And it doesn't mean you have a terrible time every day of your life, but I mean, it's like being bullied. You only have to be bullied once to be wary of it. So if you move into a workplace where management isn't clearly demonstrating this place is not that place, then of course people will presume that this place is going to give me the same treatment, or at the very least, I should just presume that until it's demonstrated otherwise. So what you're not demonstrating, you can't see. And I do think that we have a job to build the capacity and courage of leaders to go, look, you don't have to be an expert to be an advocate. And that kind of runs against the whole corporate structure. You need to be an expert before you open your mouth. You're going to go, no. In fact, I don't care if you never become an expert. You don't have to learn what every single word in or every single acronym means. And even if you did, don't worry, we're going to change the acronyms in 6 months just to mess with your head. And so we're our leaders are worried about the wrong piece. We need to get them, and we need to support them being confident in this space as visible role models, so they can see A, how important it is, and B, that, you know, if expertise is the requirement to start the journey, then nobody can start the journey. And that's the wrong way around. We need people to be able to start going, I'm starting here, I'm going to learn a bit, I'm going to learn a bit, I'm going to learn a bit. And I can be empathetic and supportive to a human being right now if I never learn what the acronyms mean. So, you know, in a way it's counterintuitive for corporate culture, but we have to support our leaders to do that.
Aisling, I have two questions for you, because you were very honest about coming into your workplace and leaving your private life, your home life at the door, but that wasn't you bringing your full, whole, real self to work. What would you say to those who might feel uncomfortable about bringing their private lives into the work, that they may not feel it's appropriate to do so? And then I'm wondering too, were you very lucky in who you worked with, your employer? the partners in the firm who work alongside you. Not everyone has that support.
Yeah, I'd agree entirely. And I think coming back to what Tiernan had just said, I think, where do we start? And where I started was respect is not optional. Respect is required. And if you have a solid ground of respect, you can move forward. So having organizations like this, by its very existence, suggests that respect is there and there's openness. I think the next thing then is, and it was the younger members of my team who said it to me, you have to show vulnerability to feel support. So if you look like you have it all sorted and you're doing fine, nobody feels they need to show you any support. So for me, it was about being prepared to be vulnerable, being prepared to be honest. I was finding things a bit difficult. And when I did that, I found, as I said, that these hidden heroes, where there were people who, I remember there was a guy who worked in facilities, and it's kind of every time I'd meet him, he'd say, "So, how's Steve?" And that was enough to get me through a day. Just somebody who didn't see me as being this sort of official worker who was, doing what I came there to do. He was somebody who saw me as a real human as well. So I think showing vulnerability, and then I would say it's step by step. This is the advice they give to Steve. It's step by step. So don't put yourself out of your comfort zone beyond which you have to. So if you don't feel the need to have to talk about your personal life in work all day, every day, that's okay. Maybe pick one or two people who you're comfortable to talk to. I was particularly lucky, I have to say, when I look back at it, in terms of the timing of the launch of Perspective, was having this big conversation in work. But I'll be honest, there were so many coming out stories in our office the following year. And, I was just one of many, but there was lots of sharing. But each of them built 5 more, I would say, because suddenly there were groups of parents who were discussing how they were supporting their kids or their cousins or their next door neighbors or their friends' kids. And then there were parents discussing what it was like for their brothers and sisters or their parents. So there was all these, wider conversations where, a bit like, so Sinead, I used to feel that I was just an imposter in these conversations. I'm just an ally. I have no right to be here. But I realized that unless the allies are there, literally pushing the conversation, as Tiernan says, then that sense of belonging can't exist. Nobody's going to feel vulnerable enough and confident enough to come out and be themselves unless they're really sure that the ally network around them is as strong as it should be and as they deserve it to be. So the other thing I would say in terms of the sort of making mistakes, a lovely example for me is my kid Steve started in secondary school this year. And like every parent with a kid starting in secondary school, you're a bit nervous about how it's going to go from, etc. And there was a little blip that he was trying to deal with, etc. And I got in touch with the vice principal and just said really discreetly, I think just could do with a little bit of support. And I said, maybe there might be somebody along, senior, a member of the teaching staff who might link with them. And he said, yeah, leave it with me. He rings me back about 2 minutes later. He goes, can it be me? Please, can it be me? And I remember where I was, and I nearly started crying. And I said, well, yeah, if it was up to me, yeah, but go talk to Steve. He goes, I want it to be me. I want to learn. I don't know what I don't know. And he has they have this mentor-mentee relationship now. And so Steve pops into his office, they have a chat. They're both big into hockey, they're both big into sport. And, this vice principal is telling me, he says, Steve, you're one of my favorite people in the world. He said, I could just talk to you all day. You're fascinating. And Steve goes, yeah, you're okay too, And to me, that's what learning is like. That vice principal has said, I don't think I know anything, never mind enough, but I'm ready to learn, I'm prepared to learn, and I can only learn from you. So I think that shows incredible support and incredible leadership, frankly. And I hope if I was in another role in another place at another time that I'd offer that too.
Yeah. And Michael, that just shows there's nothing to fear here and everything to gain on the part of the employer.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking, whenever Aisling was speaking earlier, like I just wrote down here, it's all about human stories, like we're people, we're social beings. That's what actually drove the marriage equality campaign. It's about people opening up and being visible and sharing their stories. And we're not going to get it all right, but you can talk to me, like show an interest in, what's going on in my life. That's what makes me feel valued. And I do that with with my team as well. I chat to them about what they're up to, like, you know, whatever whoever their partners are, etc. And I would expect the same kind of back, and it just opens up dialogue between you. So yeah, no, it's really important that human stories are at the front and center of this. Like, yeah.
Sinead, Colin Ward has sent in a question. Thank you, Colin, for that. Great panel today. Aisling mentioned that the firm provided unconscious bias training to employees. It's great to see many companies have begun doing this. How do companies get the full benefit of this training and ensure it's not simply a one-time event? That's for you, Sinead.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, to me, it's all about, it's about driving the culture, and unfortunately or fortunately, that has to come from the tone from the top. So in Grant Thornton, for example, we have just started on the journey of trying to get the bronze, silver and gold award for inclusion. So the first thing we did was all the partners did get unconscious bias training and also just general I&D training. So it's a journey. However, it is not going to be relevant or work in companies unless that, to me.
I think we've just lost, Sinead has just frozen for a second there. Aisling, would you pick up on that in terms of the unconscious bias training? Any types of these trainings, how do you ensure for the company that it's not a one-time event?
I think I can only speak from our own experience, but what I can say is we created what we called a safe space. So we shared some pre-reading for people to make them feel a bit more comfortable coming into the room. And we gave them some language and some acronyms, etc., for them just to be aware of. But we absolutely said at the outset, this is a safe space. Ask questions, get it wrong. You're not going to offend anyone in the room. We'd rather you ask and get it out there and help yourself support. But then it was all workshops. And I suppose what the major learning for me, and I'll be honest, I sat at the back of the room emotional, just thinking, I cannot believe my fellow colleagues are all sitting here having this conversation. But they put you into workshops where everybody was made to feel like they were a minority. So some of them were a minority because they only have one sibling or no siblings. One was a minority because they're the only girl in a family or the only boy in a family. Some were separated, some were not married, some lived in the country, some came from Dublin, but everybody was a minority in some respects. So everybody was made to feel that as a minority, it is the majority's job to bring you in. It is not the job of the person who's in the minority to break in. It is our job as the majority to bring others in. And we did all these role play experiences. But I'll be honest, it was it was quite emotional. It was quite, everybody had to be vulnerable in the room, but everybody came out of the room saying that they were forever changed, and in a very positive way, that they would see how they engage with their kids, how they would engage with their own family, how they would engage with fellow sports players on their teams, etc. Everybody felt the benefit of that inclusivity and where the responsibility sat with them. And I think for some people, there was that sense that, oh, so-and-so's a bit cold and standoffish. When I ask him or her about their weekend, they don't really tell me too much. It's not their job to make you understand their weekend. Perhaps it's your job to make sure that you're making them feel that they can give you their whole self story about where they were or weren't with their partner or otherwise, etc. And simple things like not presuming that somebody's partner is male or female. And I think I should say silly things, little things like that, people walked away from and said, I will never make that mistake again. I just will never do that again. And it just embedded it. The other big thing we did was we indicated to junior and senior members of staff, it's okay to raise your hand and say, can I ask for you for some help here? Can I ask you to correct this? So it was a two-way conversation. So it was not the case that the more senior members of staff always got it right or couldn't be corrected. It wasn't, in fact, open to more juniors to come in and give a shout out and ask for support or offer a correction, etc.
Super, yes. And that reminds me, Tiernan, of the work that you're involved in at Clifford Chance as Global Head of Inclusion, the reverse mentoring. Will you tell us what you've been doing at Clifford Chance in the sense of how it can feed into giving advice to companies and bosses and colleagues on addressing all of this?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things on it. I think reverse mentoring has been transformational for people, because it's I think one of the challenges that if inclusion becomes, here's your annual training, now come in here and sit down there and I'll tell you what's wrong with you, and we basically tell people all the things that they can do wrong for 45 minutes. Your culture, which inclusion is absolutely at the heart of, is a permanent campaign, because if you're not building it, someone else is building it. It's not that it's not being built. The one thing that's guaranteed is your culture is being built all the time. The question is, do you want to be in charge of what that building looks like? And so things like reverse mentoring as one part of that, because again, you're creating this space where people are reverse mentored by people from LGBT perspectives or ethnicity or gender. And it's that space where they can have a conversation. I think Michael said this, we underestimate human stories as being at the heart of all of this, that, we think, oh, it's, well, human stories, we'll do that as well. It's the thing at the heart of it. The number one reason people become supporters in the workplace or in society for LGBT people is when they know one. And the people who believe in LGBT equality for philosophical reasons, we already have them. They're all in the bag. All the other people are about how do we create campaigns that create spaces where people can listen, engage, and learn from each other. Reverse mentoring as a one-on-one process, is utterly fantastic. I think there's that moment you can see where people realize, oh, I thought I was doing the right thing by not doing anything wrong. And now I realize that's not enough. I need to be actively demonstrating this. Or I was already terrified to be getting the language wrong, so I was being silent. We had a politician actually in the Irish campaign, and he was a great rural politician, and I'm not saying who it is or what party they're in, but a great campaigner in the local paper, radio, TV, kept campaigning for BLT equality the whole way through the marriage campaign. So Harry was going, you got to support the BLTs, and aren't the BLTs awesome, and let's give it up for the BLTs. Now, that's a year of campaigning for sandwiches and baguettes. And that has to be okay, though, too, isn't it? Because, you're going to, what's our correct response at this moment to this brilliant ambassador who is a country rural GD? You're an outrage. Get back in your box. I can't believe you got all the language wrong. Or rock on, you're awesome. And getting our leaders through those type of campaigning structures, like reverse mentoring, like the Bubbles program, where we actually build it out into groups of 6 or 8, but also building a calendar where this is a constant theme rather than a one-off, oh, here's your annual, sit down there and I'll tell you why you're broken session, but that it's, at work we refer to it as the permanent campaign, that you are permanently campaigning, you're building out as many doorways as possible for people to become part of the journey. And I think this is important as we think about this in the workplace, because the trap we make, the mistake I think we make, workplaces can make and campaigns make, is they build one doorway and say, come over here, walk through that. And that's not how we start journeys. We all start journeys from a different place. So you got to build 100 doorways in your workplace. A campaign that understands everybody will start at a different point, and therefore, great campaigns give them lots of different entry points precisely for that reason. I think whether it's, mentoring, whether it's Bubbles, whether it's reverse mentoring, whether it's great visible events, but it all becomes, the orchestra of a great campaign.
Sinead, you're back with us. Thank you for that. Does size come into it, in the sense of the size of the company that you work for? Are the challenges different between small companies and bigger ones?
Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties. Size, I think size can make it more challenging for companies, Audrey. I think, so certainly if I talk about my company, we're 2,000 people, we're 64 partners, we're a very homogeneous partnership table, and therefore to get 64 maybe mindsets to change, it is a little bit more difficult. However, it's really helpful to have 2 or 3 or 4 really strong voices at the top who can permit the conversation and permit the discussion. I came in at the tail end of that. The one thing I want to say about reverse mentoring, we do it officially in our UK firm, and we're learning from it here in Ireland and going to launch it. But I am essentially being unofficially mentored by a member of my team. He is an absolute rock star, and it happened by accident. he wrote a LinkedIn post and he mentioned something that I had said to him at a Christmas party. He said, "Oh, I'm going home to see my partner." And I said, "Oh, show me a photo." He showed me a photo of himself and his partner. And I said, "Oh God, you make a gorgeous couple." It was a natural thing to say because they were a gorgeous couple. But for him, it was a moment, but it was a moment for me because I then said, well, okay, you need to now educate me as to why that was such a special moment for you and your boyfriend. And he is educating me. So reverse mentoring is phenomenal. And what I am trying to do for the leadership in Grant Thornton is try and educate more and more so that it is okay. And I think it is harder in a larger company, Audrey, but there needs to be 3 or 4 people who will champion it and drive it.
We're into the last 10 minutes or so of our discussion, and we could talk all afternoon, really. There are so many elements to this, but I did mention, Michael, at the start of our discussion about the pandemic and perhaps the launch of this support group, networking group, coming at a really good time, because the mental health effects of the pandemic and people returning to the office, does that increase the challenges even more?
Yeah, if I was to reflect back on where I was at the beginning of my career, I definitely feel a lot more anxious about it. I think, visibility is important, to be able to see people, to know that it's okay. Like Aisling talked about, pride rainbow flag lanyards, like that's actually really important to see, because when you see it as an LGBT person, you go, oh, it's okay to be my full self with that person or see a rainbow flag. And if you don't see that on Zoom, you just don't feel that you can be as comfortable yourself. So I'd imagine a lot of people are probably feeling a little bit anxious about going back to the workplace and talking about what their weekends will be whenever we get to have a weekend again. So yeah, I think it was actually you mentioned culture, like that's really important to get right from the top down. It is easier for a smaller organization to kind of mold that at the beginning, but it has to be cultivated and managed as new people come into the team. Like, these are our shared values. It's kind of ironic. I work for a company called And Open. Like, I can be open about myself every day, and that's a pretty special place to be.
Aisling, the pandemic, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of the Institute carried out a survey on this and the impact on mental health. That survey showed 56% of members and 67% of students want wellness and mental health supports. So that's wanted anyway, but then you throw in a pandemic on the impact of working from home and then perhaps returning to the office. And really, this couldn't be more important.
I think it can't be overstated. And I think very early in the pandemic, Steve mentioned to me that he was aware of somebody who wasn't out at home and who was now at home. So he was missing this particular fellow was missing his core group of pals in school. And he was just saying, imagine if you couldn't be out at home. And I was saying to him, well, what about the people who go to offices and can't be out in the office? And he goes, they must be so delighted to be at home. I said, well, that's if they're out at home. But we were having this conversation. So as a 13-year-old, he could conceptually grasp how difficult it must be if you had to live some part of your life not being completely true and honest with yourself. And I think I have to say, and I've said quite a number of times over the last 2 years, I just hope that the toll this has had is less than I currently anticipated. Maybe I think the impact it has had on all of us in terms of our levels of anxiety, the things we've got used to and worked around, I hope we can adjust back again in terms of the best that society can offer. Because certainly in my experience walking with Steve, I've seen the best of society and the best of kindness. I really have. We've had a few small blips along the way, but for the most part, I've been humbled by people's kindness, by people's willingness to engage, willingness to listen. So I hope that the best of us can come back to the offices together and bring compassion and kindness with us, because if you have that, you can build anything. And I think if we've learned nothing from the last 2 years, it's that life can be very precarious and there's quite a lot of unknowns out there, and we just have to mind each other and just take it one step at a time, day by day, but just kindness and compassion first, and then billable hours and fees and cash, etc. But it has to be kindness first.
Tiernan, 42% of students in that survey said they wanted networking events, which are hard coming out of a pandemic. So how can things be done to help and support people when they're not working face to face?
I think one of the things we think about, we'll be learning a lot over the next 2 years, because there's probably a whole pile of things we're going to learn as we go, because we've never done this before. We've never moved everyone back from kitchens to offices, or partially back to offices. I think one of the things about the importance of networks, it's so important to recognize that for people from minorities, you have to build those networks. You have to really work hard to invest in them, because that's part of the problem. Part of the challenge is, the main networks that already exist aren't yours. So what we have to do is actively work out, how do we build out those networks and connect with people, and recognize that people that don't have those networks don't thrive and don't have the opportunities that they should have, rather than us expecting them to join networks that don't look like them. So I think the networking piece is hugely important. I think we've learned over lockdown about how we can connect so much better with people, which is great. I mean, today we're all sitting on a camera and we're, getting the same experience out of this, whereas probably 2 years ago, if this had been, we would have demanded this be in person, or, we just go, no, it should be rubbish if it's just on the telly. And that's changed culturally. So that's a massive opportunity to connect with people. I think the other bit is flexible working, and working from home is seen as, huge benefits to it, definitely. But we also have to keep an eye out for the fact that it won't all be huge benefits, especially for people from minorities, and that there's going to be bubbles that come up that we didn't expect, and that we have to be agile and listening a lot over the next 2 years, because ironically, a lot of the problems that people may meet, they haven't met them yet, so they don't know them either. So, engagement and listening a lot as management is really important. And as a network like Balance, one of the brilliant things it can do, and I've said this to all our affinity networks globally in Clifford Chance, you have a year in front of you where you are literally the focus group for what reality is looking like at a moment of great change. Listen, and give people the opportunity to come to you and tell you what they're experiencing. Because without the information, what we're going to craft is just crafted on hunches. We may as well just go out and have a glass of wine and decide what should happen. But platforms and affinity networks or ERGs or whatever people call them, this is their moment to influence what the future of work looks like for networking in a way that could never have been conceived 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So, back to the original point, almost, Audrey, what a great time to start a network. And what an important time to start a network, as we're trying to listen to people at a time of massive change.
Tiernan, thank you so much. Bernadette says, fabulous event. Thank you. Dee says, great conversation, everyone. Thank you so much. Lots of kindness and compassion for our members and students from the team at Thrive Wellbeing Hub. Connor says, this has been a really inspiring discussion. Thank you so much for organising. Looking forward to more activities from Balance. And Lorraine says, and I think this will really make you all proud for doing this today. Thank you all so much for highlighting the importance of visibility. As an openly gay person, I am less likely to discuss my personal life in my workplace. However, this conversation has spurred me to be that voice and to show visibility. Thank you so much, Lorraine. That is brilliant to hear. And if you want more information, click on the link to head over to the Institute Balance at www.charteredaccountants.ie/balance/balance home. Well, that was a fantastic conversation, as Kenneth Henry has just put into our chat. Very important initiative. Thank you to Tiernan, to Aisling, to Michael, and to Sinead for taking part and for sharing your lived experiences and insights with us today. It's been an honour for me to be part of this event. So thank you, Chartered Accountants Ireland, for inviting me, and congratulations and best wishes again to you all with Balance. Before we finish, let me hand you back once again to John.
Thank you, Audrey, and thanks to the panel. Wow, I mean, that was just like so powerful, so honest, so raw, and like I think it's been said a couple of times, personal stories are what make this real and relevant. And so thank you for giving Balance such a great opening launch. Thanks as well to the brilliant organising group behind Balance. We're set up under the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We have been working way behind the scenes for the last number of months in terms of figuring out what we want to do and our plans for the future. And it's been a real team effort. Thanks to the team in Chartered Accountants Ireland for the setup and the support and the launch comms and our website. There are 2 resources I think that we'd like to share with you today. One was mentioned there in the conversation. There is a wellbeing hub that's available to all students, staff, and members of the institute. It's called Thrive. Thrive is free to all who come and navigate its services. It's on the website. It's there to support you and us as we go through our lives' ups and downs. It's a new wellbeing hub, and we really would appreciate you spreading the word that it exists. And similarly for CA Support. CA Support is a long-standing charity that sits under the umbrella of Chartered Accountants Ireland. And again, it's there to provide emergency financial assistance at times in our lives when things don't go well, and it's really important as an institute that we're there for all of the students, the staff, and the members in the good times and bad. So really important that we try to highlight in the work of Balance these supports. So Thrive, the new wellbeing hub, and CA Support. And finally, thanks to everybody for coming here today, and for those who will watch it on the recording. There is an ask, of course. There's no such thing as a free webinar. We really do want you to get involved. diversity@charteredaccountants.ie is our email. The network is ready to go in terms of future ideas, structures, and plans, but we need you to come and express an interest in getting involved. We are formulating our kind of go forward structure over the next weeks and months. If you email us, if you contact us through the website, we will get back in touch with you. This is a group that hopefully will get out and about and through all 4 corners of this country. It's not Dublin centric. We're very keen on that. We'll support and we'll go and present and be visible wherever you want us to be. It's a members organization, it's for students, and it's for staff. So that probably wraps it for today. Many thanks for registering. Please continue to engage with us, watch this space on Balance, and thank you and have a great weekend.